everyone. There's rattles there if you want to try to keep beat with everyone there. Those are some that I make for sales.
You can't take them.
All right, we are
You
live.
gotta give them back.
Got to give them back.
That's right.
Or
All right. Good evening, everyone. Mike Taguvin, Haumi Dakyapi, Noah Akitaru. Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome, my dear relatives, to Good Medicine Way. Tonight we are excited to hear from one of our relatives, Chad Johnson, on finding God on the Indian Road. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited! I can't wait to hear this. Hey. But yeah, I just wanted to extend a nice welcome to everyone watching on YouTube, Facebook. Hey, there's that book. Uncle Casey's displaying it for us. Hey, I'm so excited though. I'm so very excited to see this. But yeah, so Good Medicine Way takes place in the land of the Tiwa people, the Pueblo people, the Isleta, the Sandia, the Zia. I can't remember who else is there. Just kidding. And it's also the stomping grounds for the Dene, the Nuchu, and the Apache people. So it's very beautiful there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, and I'm coming to you from the lands of the Caddo, Comanche, Kiowa, Osage, and Wichita nations here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So yeah, it's very exciting. We have so many relatives joining us from all over Turtle Island, and we're very, very pleased that you're here to join us tonight to join in the celebration, our celebration of life, really. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to my brother Eshe for the directional prayer. So go ahead and take it away, Eshe.
Thank you, Emperidaka. Matios. Good evening, everyone. I just had to find my directions here because I'm in the different room. I'm not in the land and it's dark out, so I have to orient where east is to start out. Gotta try to do it right. All right, here we go. Light bearer, we now face the east. We thank you for a new day and a new beginning. We thank you for fire, which gives us warmth, light, and protection. We ask that whatever parts of ourselves need light and illumination, that you would shine your life-giving spirit on us, just as Father, Son shines life-giving light on us each new day, and Mother Earth and our relatives. Bring light and wisdom on our life's journey, so we may not walk in darkness, but we walk in your light. And life-giving spirit, we now face the south. We thank you for the gift of healing and adaptability. We thank you for the waters of life which nourish our beings. We ask that you would teach us how to be fluid, like water, so that when new or difficult situations arise, we may navigate them in a good and healthy way. Bring abundance to our lives, so we can channel your abundance and your goodness to the nations around us. Great healer, we now face the west. We thank you for the night as well as for the day. We thank you for bringing to light what would have otherwise remained in darkness. And also thank you for the challenges of life and increase our dependence on you. We ask that whatever arises that is negative, that you would give us clarity to know how to end toxic cycles that don't serve the community of creation or you. Bring rest to our spirits and resolutions to the cycles that we encounter, just as our relatives rest when the sun sets each new day. And we're now going to face the west. I encourage you all to, if you can, find your directions and do it. Face them with me. So we now face the west. We thank you for the night as well as the day. We thank you for bringing to light. We did this one. We face the north, rescuing spirit. We thank you for the spirit of the wind, which breathes life into all of us, moment by moment. We thank your life-giving breath for resurrecting and bringing to life what was dead. We ask that our minds and hearts will be nourished and kept well. We ask for good thoughts and for protection from the crooked ways of the trickster, and also ask you for a blessing and guidance to those we perceive as our enemies. Bring your protection and purifying presence to revive what needs healing in our lives and new life, just as the winds blow the dead leaves from the trees, so that new leaves may grow in their place in the spring. And Spirit, which comes to us from Grandmother Earth, we thank you for supporting and feeding us throughout our lives. It is said that when we separate from the womb of our human mothers, you take the place as nourisher and as our grandmother, the earth. We ask that whatever creator you would have us to do with our hands and feet to usher in, be part of that new creation and the present creation for all of our relatives, that we would hear and respond to your voice. We ask you to help us and take pity on us as human beings so we can use the good gifts you provide us in a good way in order to bring more life into the world. In Spirit, which comes to us from Father Sky, we thank you for the blessings of life, creator and maker of all good things. And we thank you for being near us and for nourishing and speaking with us moment by moment. Remind us of your power when we grow weak. Communicate to us with your love and grow our hearts soft so it may be like a hollow bone that is hollow and clear. Ainahan, let it be so. Pass it on, I guess, to you, Emperador.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, brother. Thinking about what you had shared a little bit earlier, good luck to all of our student relatives, those who are going there, who are taking classes right now, those who are still balancing like family and school and work and all that kind of stuff. Y'all are doing a great job. Your semester is almost over, so hang in there, keep going, push forward, eh? All right, so now I will be handing this over to the Grovers, who will be giving us a musical, how do I say that? A musical uplifting. So go ahead and take it away, Grovers.
All right, so we're going to be doing our version of the creation song, which we learned this one from the Uptown Worship Band. It just basically comes right from Psalm 148, and then we modified a couple things on it. We did this before, so hopefully you all remember it. It's pretty straightforward, so you can jump in.
All right, big round of applause, everybody. Woo, that was beautiful, eh? I could hear everybody in person too. That was amazing, eh? But yes, that was very beautiful. I really enjoyed that. Just like last week when the Grovers also learned how to sing a song for my presentation last week, eh? Sadly, it didn't go as planned, but you know, it is what it is, eh? So for Creation Insights, or maybe this week in Turtle Island, I decided to volunteer for that because I do have a few insights to share. So this past weekend, on many reservations throughout Indian country, our people gathered in celebration to honor our veterans, our warriors, our grandfathers, grandmothers, all the way down the list to even our grandchildren. And of course, we have Pastor Casey here, who proudly served in the Marines. So it's very beautiful, eh? We have a veteran who leads us as well, eh? But yeah, I was just thinking about those who like more like willingly offered their lives to defend and protect, and bravely chose to defend their homelands, their families, their people against any type of threat. So one of the questions that I would like to ask a few of the veterans to kind of think about, go ahead and put it in the chat or put it in the YouTube comments or Facebook comments. But I wanted to know what made you or influenced you to serve in the military? Because I personally had my own story. I wanted to, but I'm a heavy set lady, so I didn't get a chance to, but I do come from a family of veterans. My grandpa served in the Air Force. My dad served as a paratrooper in the Army. He even went to Germany, and he was fighting. He went to Germany for a little while, then he went to the Gulf, where he told me a story about what he saw there, and how it kind of like warped his mind a little bit. There are very many stories like that, but a lot of our veterans are so brave to come home and to fight for us. You know, it's a very honorable thing. It's important to show true honor and respect. And plus, my husband is also in the Navy, or was in the Navy. Hey, he served 2 years in Sasebo, Nagasaki, Japan. So I'm wearing the blue for my husband today. But yeah, it's important to create a space to honor those who have demonstrated the most purest form of love, creator's love, to be willing to lay down their lives in order to protect and defend their relatives or humanity. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to all of our veterans, since we didn't get a chance to do that last week. I wanted to do it today. So that was part of my Creation Insight. And yeah, I think I'll just probably leave it right there. Hey, I have many more, but I'll save them for another day. Hey. All right, so now we get to go to one of our more interactive parts of our one of the more interactive segments of our program tonight, and that is the First Nations version Creator's Prayer. This week, since we didn't get to last week, we get to have Leah McCoo come on. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Brian, and he can do that however, because I know there's a certain way we do it. So go ahead and take it away, everybody. Hey.
All right, so we'll read through the prayer together, and then we'll have Leah then go through in detail with the sign language with us. So let me get up and switch to it. All right, so Creator Sets Free shows us how to pray. O Great Spirit, our Father from above, we honor your name as sacred and holy. Bring your good road to us, where the beauty of your ways in the spirit world above is reflected in the earth below. Provide for us day by day the elk, the buffalo, the salmon, the corn, the squash, and the wild rice. All the things we need for each day. Release us from the things we have done wrong. In the same way, we release others who have done wrong to us. Guide us away from the things that tempt us to stray from your good road, and set us free from the evil one and his worthless ways. Aho, may it be so. All right, and now we'll hand it over to Leah McCoo.
Ready? Ready?
Oh,
Join me. Ready? Join me. Oh, great Spirit, our Father from above, we honor your name as sacred, holy. Bring your good road to us, where the beauty of your ways in the spirit world above is reflected in the earth below. Provide for us day by day the elk, the buffalo, the salmon, the corn, the squash, and wild rice. All the things we need for each day. Release us from the things we have done wrong. In the same way, we release others for the things done wrong to us. Guide us away from the things that tempt us to stray from your good road, and set us free from the evil one and his worthless ways. Aho, may it be so.
Wash day, dear relatives. Wash day. Hey, that was great. Hey. It was nice not to see Leah speed running it. She was taking her time with it. But yes, thank you. Yeah, a round of applause, everybody. We did it. We made it through. Yes. Hey. And thank you so much, Leah McCoo. Thank you so much for teaching us that. Hey. But yes, hang on one second. Okay, I'd like to hand this off to Leah Grover for our smoke signals and giveaway time. So go ahead and take it away, Leah.
Leah McCoo, is this how you say good medicine way?
Yes.
And then you go, Jesus is good medicine way.
Jesus. This is Yeshua. So Jesus or Jesus is good medicine.
Medicine. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. Well, another or an actual smoke signal here would be inviting all the ladies for tomorrow. I think is the grand finale of Braiding Sweetgrass tomorrow at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. You can find the link for that on the Good Medicine Way Facebook group, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. So that's been very good.
Yes,
Casey
and
Anderson.
we're continuing Pagan Christianity on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. good group, small group, but very interesting talks and a lot very helpful, I think, especially for Karen, who is really looking at doing things in her neighborhood there and going to be putting this into practice. And very good. Others are adding very good insights that they're learning as well. So that'll be tomorrow, and also find the link on our Facebook page.
Yeah, and then another announcement is this is our last gathering at being hosted at University Heights United Methodist Church. So we want to give a shout out to all the folks at University Heights and thank you for allowing us to use your space for the last couple years or so.
Yes,
it's been?
couple
Yeah,
years.
so we're moving over to Mesa View. United Methodist Church is going to be hosting us, and if you're in the Albuquerque area and you want to find us in person over there, it's on the corner of Montano and Taylor Ranch, and Taylor Ranch is like 1 block west of Coors. So yeah, corner of Montano and Taylor Ranch will be over there in the future, starting next week. Yeah, same time, Monday, 6 p.m. Mountain, but we'll be over on the west side instead of in the university area.
Okay.
Yes.
Another smoke signal is that our tech bro Dave Selnick is ill tonight. So if anyone wants to be the magic with your fingers, looking up websites of whatever people mention and throwing them up on the chat, be my guest.
Yes.
Be our guest.
The speed texters, those that are on their phones right now. We got a couple of them in-house that are still on their phones. Maybe they can do that before us there. So, yeah.
All right.
Very good.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that might be all the announcements.
I do have a quick one. Yeah,
Alright.
since I am in charge of what's it called? Since I'm in charge of like filling in the spots here for like our reading creators word or like I don't know, the send off prayer or any of those kind of things. If you're interested, don't be afraid to send me a request, for anything you may want to step up and do. There are many of us who are here that normally do this stuff, but it's kind of nice to like switch it out to get other people to also take part in this beautiful time that we have here. So just throwing that out there. If you'd like to get a hold of me, Facebook is the best way, but if you want my number or my email, just put it in the chat that you want it and I'll go ahead and stick it up for everybody. So but yeah, just be on anybody who wants to do that. If you feel that calling on your heart, don't be afraid, okay? Because Creator will never steer you wrong when it comes to that. So yeah.
Yeah, and dovetailing on what Empedocta just said, one thing that might not be as obvious of a thing that we need done is when we have our giveaway blanket up, we want to leave it up for enough time for people to do things, so we always have a song, a story, or something going on. If there's nobody else and Leah and I come up with something, that would be if you just want to do something small. That's a easy one to do. It just has to be something that's not visual because we will have the image of our giveaway blanket up. But if you have a song or a story, a poem, you make weird noises that are interesting. I mean, I don't know, it could be anything. So that's another thing. So there's a thing, there's like the directional prayer, there's creation insights, and then there's the thing during the giveaway song, and then there's also the sending off blessings. Those are the main things that we need people for every week. So get with Empedocta if you feel led in any of those things.
Yeah, and also, if you feel that you would like to share with us as one of our speakers, let me know, and we can put you in line here. And because all of us here have been part, one of our key things here is that the ministry of all believers is that we all take a turn in Good Medicine Way giving a talk. So all of you, Karen, put something together and to share with us. Helen, I know we got Pastor up there. She's been with us. The other Karen there in Canada. sheet in there. So think about that, and you can let me know, and we'll put you in line here. It don't have to be something extraordinary, big time, but something right from your heart that you'd like to share with us. So think about that.
All right. Well, we can move over into the giveaway time. And this is the time that if you want to bless the work of Good Medicine Way financially, you can go again to our Good Medicine Way Facebook group. And at the top, there's a logo to click on to donate through PayPal or another card. And in a minute, we'll put up our QR code blanket that you can take a picture of the QR code to donate. That way, people in person will have a blanket here. And then just Facebook message me, Leah Grover, if you'd like to donate another way. All right, you want to tell them about this song?
All right.
Do we want to
Would you
talk
put the
about
blanket down?
Or is it just a big
I
secret?
guess we can talk about it while I get the blanket up. So, yeah, the song that we're going to do is from our Siberian cousins. So this song was written by Alexander Sozherol. He was one of these, they call them the seven, these 7 guys who came to know Jesus in Tuva and did a lot of work and bringing the gospel to Tuva in a contextual way. And Alexander Sozherol was also like really instrumental with a couple other people with bringing interest to the Tuvan youth and their culture. A lot of their cultural ways were kind of on the verge of dying. It was kind of the last generation of people. And Alexander Sozherol, along with Kangarol Andar and a few other people, really did a lot of work to connect young Tuvans with the elders that had traditional knowledge and really, kept their cultural traditions alive in that way. But anyway, so we learned this song when we were doing when I was doing a trip over there, which is a long story. But anyway, we learned it. I brought it back. Leah, a friend of ours, helped translate some of the words, and then Leah came up with some English words for it. So when we do it, we'll do the first verses in English, and we'll sing it kind of in the way that you're used to hearing singing. Then the second verse will be in Tuvan, and I will use one of the Tuvan forms of singing for that. And then I'll do a couple other Tuvan forms of singing. And then we'll do the last verses in English. And I'm not sure if I'm going to sing it Western or Tuvan. We'll see what happens, see how I'm inspired. But anyway, let me throw up the QR code blanket and just prepare your minds for out of the ordinary.
What was it that Tuvan and Navajo are both from the Athabascan language family, I think?
No, that's Mongolian.
Mongolian?
Mongolian, and there's a lot of cultural and DNA linkages between the Mongolian people and the Navajo people. The Tuvans are kind of northwest of Mongolia, and they're like the southern Siberian peoples are really a different group of people from the Mongolians. But there is a lot of legends amongst the southern Siberians about people of theirs that went to the north and
To Alaska and never came back.
So there's definitely some linkages there too. But anyway, enough chit chatting. Let's keep on.
Let's rock.
Let's rock.
Oh my goodness, that was absolutely amazing. Seriously, like Helen, I believe it said it was very very cool, very cool. Eh? But yeah, thank you, Grovers. I'm so happy that you all are like learning new songs and spreading a new joy in the songs that you find that you want to share. It's very beautiful. Yeah, my babies love the low tone you just did.
All right. By the way, this instrument, somebody asked about it. This is called a chanzi. There's another form of this that's kind of the same, that's a little bit more well known, and it has a smaller body that's all covered in skin, and that's a dash palor. And so the chanzi is kind of a type of dash palor. But it's from the Republic of Tuva in southern Siberia, right where Russia borders Mongolia. And so, yeah.
Brian, I have that DNA as well as Mongolian. And
All
when
right.
you were singing, what you were singing was what they call throat singing, and it's also done in Eskimo.
Yeah. So the Inuit people have a different type of thing, but throat singing kind of covers a large range of things. But yeah, the Inuits have a singing tradition like that. And then the Tuvans, there's like the low rumbly stuff in their language is called kargara, and then the little high whistly thing I did is called sagut, and then there's another form of it that's called hume, which I didn't really do in that song. But yeah, it's fun stuff. If you ever want to know about Tuvan stuff, feel free to
They do
contact me.
hip hop. The young kids do hip hop.
Yeah, that was one of the things that Kongarol Andar did to get the young people back interested, is he found some kids who were all into hip hop culture, and they said, hey, make me some beats, and they made these beats, and then he started rapping in the throat singing style, and they were like, oh, dude, that's
Pretty
cool.
cool. That's pretty
So
cool.
that's how he got, that was one of the ways he got the youth
Yeah.
interested back in their
I
traditional
was
culture.
watching some of that. It's like, and some of them do that real high pitch.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
That's really cool.
All right, that was beautiful to know. We're gonna have to engage some of our youth that way too. Just kidding. Let's throw some hip hop music in there. Let's throw some Stan Jotty in there. Just kidding.
Yeah, I think Superman and the hallucination
There we go.
got that covered, but the more the merrier. Just bring it on.
Yes. All right. So reading Creator's Word tonight, which is Romans 12, 9 through 21, is Diane Melton. Diane Melton. Romans 12, 9 through 21. She will be reading Creator's Word tonight. So go ahead and take it away, Diane.
Thank you, Empedadaka. And I will be reading from the First Nations version, which we all love. Yeah, different color, same book. Okay, Romans 12, 9 through 21. More wisdom from a wisdom keeper. Love with a true heart. Hate what is evil and hold on tight to what is good. Love like family and honor others by putting them first. Be a good firekeeper and never let your spiritual fire go out. Excuse me. As you serve our honored chief, let hope make your heart glad. Keep sending your voice to the Great Spirit, even when the road gets hard to walk. Give what you can to help the sacred family members who are in need. Open your homes and hearts to others. Bless the ones who seek to harm you. Bless and do not curse. Dance with the ones who dance for joy, and shed tears with the ones whose hearts have fallen to the ground. Seek to live in harmony with all. Do not think you are better than others. Walk the road of life with the humble of heart, and do not be wise in your own eyes. No one should pay back evil with evil. Do what you know to be honorable in the eyes of another. If it is within your power, walk the road of peace with everyone. My much loved family members, do not take the punishment of others into your own hands. Instead, turn all anger and wrath over to the Great Spirit. For the sacred teachings tell us, punishment for wrongs belongs to me, says the Great Spirit Chief. I will make sure that wrongs are made right again. You should do the opposite. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If your enemy thirsts, give him a drink. Your kindness will be like burning coals poured on his head, as his shame for the way he has treated you bursts into flame. Do not let evil take over in your heart, but overcome evil with good. Thank you, Father, for your words.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. That was very beautiful. Okay, now we're going to go into our first stillness time, the Native American flute provided by Brian Grover. So go ahead and take it away, Brian.
All right, I'm honored to introduce our speaker tonight. We've gotten to know each other just recently on Facebook, and then we talked on telephone and asked him if he would be our speaker on Good Medicine Way. So lined him up and gave him a chance. This is Chad Johnson. He's a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, Oklahoma, the ordained minister of the United Methodist Church, and he serves a church in North Texas, and he's soon to be moving to Oklahoma in Missionary Conference, where he'll be doing a church in the Oklahoma area very soon. I'll let him talk about that more, and then tell us about family life and that. So this is Chad Johnson, our new friend.
Well, Chukma, everybody, as we say in Chickasaw. I'll introduce myself real quick. Chukma Sahochafor Chad Johnson, Chikashasaya. Hello, my name is Chad Johnson, and I am Chickasaw. I'm honored to be here with you all, and can't thank you all enough for this opportunity. And special thanks to my uncle here for inviting me and having me today. And to talk about something that is so easy for me to talk about, and I promise I won't go forever or too long, but Native American spirituality, and really what has come into fruition in my book, Finding God on the Indian Road. And so when Uncle asked me to talk about this, I said, hey, this is easy, I can do this. So to begin, I thought I'm going to invite us to kind of close our eyes or get into a space where you can picture what I'm going to describe for you. It won't be super foreign and it won't be hard to picture, but I invite us just briefly to imagine ourselves sitting at a powwow. We know the powwow well. We all of us, I'm sure, are familiar with this to some degree. Many of us have probably danced. I invite us also, if not a powwow, if you know what a stomp dance is, this is Chickasaw culture. But if you've seen a stomp dance, but put yourself in this place just for a minute. Imagine the sounds. You hear the drum beating. You hear the singing. You can hear the rhythmic footsteps falling in line with the drum as it goes along. You can hear the shakers. If you're at a powwow, you can hear the swoosh of the skirts and the fabrics. And so now, having imagined this just for a second, just for a moment, putting ourselves in this sacred place, I invite us here to think about what do we see, what do we hear, what emotions do we feel in this time and place. We hear this, and I think we instantly see beauty, right? We hear sacredness, we hear holiness at work. The sights, the movements, the traditions. We hear our ancestors singing along with us. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. This is good. This is good medicine, to say it in a way. The book begins in this place almost because where this is what we hear, this is what we see, this is what we know, this is what we feel. This is not what first encounter persons felt, saw, and thought and heard. First encounter persons, missionaries and colonists, heard sacrilegious sounds. They did not match any form of worship or music that they had ever encountered before. They heard crude, to them, unrecognizable sounds vocally doing things that they had never even thought the voice could do before. They heard foreign sounds that made no sense, that frightened and confused them. These sounds were deemed demonic, savage, inhuman, certainly not sacred or divine by any means. So it really should come as no surprise that early Christians, when encountering our native ancestors, immediately rejected the acts of our people. And this is really where the book stems and where it begins. When we look at the prevailing beliefs around spirituality throughout history in the Christian church, we see a very closed-minded view, unfortunately. You know, in the apostolic age, we get spirituality was quite simple. Do as the apostles did and as Jesus taught them. Plain and easy, right? The ante-Nicene period, spirituality moves beyond this a little bit. It begins to adopt different ways of connecting with God that centers on the life of Christ. In the Middle Ages, we get spirituality focused more on the rituals and the established church and how Jesus can be experienced through these acts. The Renaissance era, we get a little bit of a shift. It dips into the love of Christ and how spirituality is understood and how we live out Christ in our life. John of the Cross said these words, "The sweet and living knowledge that she, the soul, says he, God, taught her is mystical theology, the secret knowledge of God that spiritual persons call contemplation." And this is so indicative of that time. So the trend here can be seen in the predominant view. Theologically, it was a Christocentric view over a theocentric view. A Christ-centered view instead of a more God-centered view. The early Christians from the apostolic age to 1492, when first encounter happened, and then even after, spiritually was linked to one of the unifying and central concepts that was the life and the ministry of Jesus Christ. So for early colonists and missionaries who had an ingrained view of what it means to connect with God, it all stemmed from traditional masses and worship and rituals, hymns sung in unison and often in a 3/4 very organized meter, sacramental practices celebrating the life of Jesus Christ, all of which was done within the walls of a church and a monastery. And so we look back at history just for a minute, and the acts of Native Americans didn't stand a chance. The radical distinctiveness was seen as unholy, unrighteous, demonic, and counter to God because it did not fit this preset rubric that Christians came bearing. I think to put it bluntly, friends, these early Christians imposed on our ancestors their concept of spiritual living. I think one, because that's all they knew. I think the other thing is because they were unwilling to view from a theocentric, a God perspective. and more they kept their Christocentric, Jesus Christ-centered approach. So them, if it wasn't about Jesus, then it couldn't be about God. And ultimately, I think when I look at this history, I see a deep pain that the Christian church missed the spiritual ways of our people entirely, of Native people. So I think one of the questions I ask, and the book kind of moves into this next, is, so what is spirituality? And I throw a lot of definitions in the book. I won't read them all tonight, but just a few that I kind of stuck with. So James Nelson, in his book, Psychology, Religion, and Spirituality, says, spirituality is a difficult term to narrow down, but definitions that focus on the singular aspects of spirituality undermine the multifaceted nature of the topic and the various layers that decent definitions should offer. And so James Nelson pushes against very thin or just very one-minded understanding of spirituality. Sandra M. Snyder's, in her writing, The Blackwell Companion to Christian Spirituality, argues that first, spirituality is not simply spontaneous experience, however elevating or illuminating as it may be, but it is a conscious and deliberate way of living. It is an ongoing project, not merely a collective of experiences or episodes. Thus, lived spirituality is often referred as one's spiritual life. And this is where she says this stems from. And I think when broken down, when we break this down further, friends, Native American spirituality bears many of the traits of Christian spirituality. It just didn't look the same. And this was the biggest hiccup for the Christian church. The truth is, if early colonists had taken the time to learn, appreciate, have reverence for, I think the church could have learned to be living in communion with, as we say in Chickasaw, Abba Benili, which means creator. I think a deeper way of living in connection with creator would have been found, but that didn't happen. The Oxford Handbook of American Indian History writes this: the cultural landscape of the North America before the colonization movement that began in the 14th century was immensely larger and more complex than the European landscape. They go on to cite that there was an estimated 5 to 10 mission people speaking more than 300 distinct languages living on the continent before European encounter. Now think about that. Prior to first encounter, before colonization hit, before colonists got here, our people had a diverse community with over 300 languages. That's 300 often similar, but yet variances on not only language and culture, but also understanding of spiritual living. And so spirituality had this wonderful, diverse and fluid and creative and expansive understanding prior to colonists got here. And the issue is the early church said, no, we have to make that fit into this box. And when we look throughout history, we see a movement from this moment, from this kind of pivotal historical moment that led to the abuse that Native people went under years and years following that point. The Native American people have been told constantly, especially during residential schools in that era, that if you have long hair, you can't be Christian. That's not what we do, especially males. If you speak your native language, you can't be Christian. That's not what we do. You need to learn to speak English and maybe Latin at the most. If you sing your traditional songs, that's not Christian. You need to learn English hymns in 3/4 meter, which was predominant at the time, and that's praising God. If you dance your dances, no, we sit when we praise, and we don't get out of our seat, and we don't make a sound. And this is how we praise God. And constantly we can see throughout history the effects of the misunderstanding that happened so many years ago in history. And so the book starts with a very raw historical outlook about what has taken place, what has happened, and then begins to shift into what has taken place after that. And then, of course, we know the absurdity had no end. Pope Alexander VI issued a papal decree or bull at that time called Intercatera, which gave consent and blessing to Spain and Portugal to colonize the Americas and the present Native Americans as their subjects. And this is the language used in that papal decree, that they were subjects to be conquered or to. And the decree gave details that promoted the colonization, conversion, and even enslavement of indigenous people with that very understanding. Here's a quote from that papal decree. "And we make a point and depute you and your said heirs and successor lords of them," them being Native American people, "with full and free power, authority, and jurisdiction of every kind," and then he goes on, "by the authority of Almighty God, conferred upon us in Blessed Peter and of the vicarship of Jesus Christ, which we hold on earth, to carry out these acts." And we look back at this and we say, well, that was a very unholy time. That was a very tragic time in history. We weep over this. This was horrible. And yet the church of the time was using God in a way to weaponize their efforts against Native American people. I think it'd be easy and nice to say, well, you know, Chad, that was then. It didn't happen or didn't last that very long in history, but that's just simply not the truth, right? As we go on, in 1883, the Indian Religious Crimes Code attempted to strip us of our religious freedoms. The law banned our ceremonies and religious practices. Authorities confiscated or destroyed our sacred objects. In response, we were forced to hold our sacred ceremonies in private and in secret. And so now we get further throughout history. We see the same thing happening over and over again. There is a misunderstanding or a lack of appreciation for Native American spirituality in its entirety. And so David Hodge and Gordon Lim, I referenced them a few times, and they have some great writings. They do a very good job of trying to tackle the very difficult concept of Native American oppression and the role of spirituality. They claim this quote, "Indeed, although the dominant secular narrative often ignores spirituality or even frames it as pathological, spirituality plays a central role in the health and wellness for many Native Americans." And they identify several key factors. So the three dimensions of personality that they highlight are affect, will, and cognition. And they say that can be supplemented by three dimensions of the spirit: communion, conscious, and intuition. So communion, they say, refers to one's relationship with the creator, the creator God, or Abba Benili in Chickasaw. Conscience refers to a sense of right and wrong, and intuition refers to the ability to know, to come up with insights that bypass normal cognition and channels. And so for them, everything about the cognitive aspects of life stems deeply to the spiritual. And their argument is this: you cannot separate the two. Hard as you may try, we can't separate the cognitive life from the spiritual life. They are intertwined, and they must remain intertwined. Lee Irwin, another writer that I like to quote in my book, says, "It is that connectedness to core values and deep beliefs that I mean by when I say spirituality, a pervasive quality of life that develops out of the authentic participation in values and real life practices meant to connect members of a community with the deepest foundations of personal affirmation and identity. And in this sense, spirituality is inseparable from any sphere of activity as long as it connects with affirmative values and sources of authentic commitment." And what they're really getting at is this, especially from a Native American view and perspective, is we can't separate who we are from our spiritual life. And so part of the book, I write about a parishioner who came to me and he said, "Oh, Chad, I need you to help me. I feel so distanced from God right now. I need you to help me get back on track." And I said, "Okay, so what do you imagine that looking like?" And he said, "Well, I just need a few new spiritual practices. Give me a few new ones and I can get back on track." And I instantly didn't like this, but I said, "Okay, well, let's try it. I think you're going to be back in my office not too long. We'll give this a shot." So I gave him a few. I said, "Hey, why don't you try meditating, and maybe you could try reading the Bible in a Lectio Divina style, or let's try this." So a week and a half or a month and a half later, here he came. And he said, "Oh, Pastor Chad, I tried those. They didn't work. I know that there's just one. If I can just find the right one, then that'll fix this, and I'll feel closer to God." And I said, "Okay, I think there's a deeper problem." And we him-hawed around, and he didn't want to have that conversation. So I said, "Okay, well, hey, here's some more. Try it. I think you're going to be back in my office in not too long." 3 months later, here he came. And finally, I said, "Brother, I think we need to have an honest conversation about what spirituality is, how we understand spirituality, and what it means to live in connection with God." And that conversation went, he kept using language that I thought was interesting. He says, my wife is really spiritual. I'm just not a spiritual person, Chad. And it was kind of this moment that I had this, hey, we're going to have to pause everything for a minute. And I told him, I said, I don't think that there's a thing about, I don't think we can not be a spiritual person. I said, I don't know that we're approaching this from the right way. In our conversations, he began to ask me about my own life, my spiritual practices, what I do, and how I see spiritual living. And I said, well, I can't answer that without talking about who I am as a Chickasaw person. And I said, a lot of my understanding of who I am and who my relationship with God comes from who I've been raised to be as a Chickasaw. And I said, this is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to hearing. So we had this wonderful conversation, and he came away going, man, I love this. And part of our conversation, and this is one of the big sections in the book, is we talked a lot about what does it mean to be a human being, not a human doing. And this is some language that I picked up in seminary that I've kind of borrowed and adopted and shared. But the fact that Christianity today, in so many ways, tries to make spirituality or works to make spirituality, put it in a box and then put the box on the shelf and have it ready for when you're having a rainy day or life context goes really bad and you need to feel better, or you feel distance from God. And then you can go get the box and take it out and open it up, and then you have all this spirituality, and then you can feel better about yourself or feel better about the situation or feel closer to God. And I said the issue with that is it goes against everything that I have been taught, and I believe what it means to be a spiritual person. And I said, that's human doing. When we just go do things to make ourselves feel better, or we go get this box, we treat spirituality as a tool, right? It's like a wrench. I've got a wrench in my toolbox, and when I need the wrench, I'll go get the wrench, and then I'll use it to fix whatever, and then I put it right back in the box. And the thing about that is, there's a lot of space and time in between using the wrench. And I said, and I think the approach is counter to what native spirituality is. Native spirituality is how do we live into connecting with God in everything we do and everything we say and who we are at our core. And it's kind of a shift. And I think history's taught us in a lot of differences between native people and non-native people. We can look at these differences across history. One of the things that I write in the book that I really love are the writings of Henrietta Mann and Anita Phillips, who highlight this. They have this great chart in their work, The Spirit Walk. If you get anything from this, go get The Spirit Walk. This is such a great book. I love this. But they have this great chart. They highlight American Indian values and major culture American American values. So Indian values, they say, are value the person, great respect for elders, sharing of material goods, humility, honoring past traditions, emphasizing the mystical, harmony with nature, community, and cooperation. And then they counter this with majority culture American values. So this is non-native values, which value a person's possessions, often idealizing youthfulness, private ownership, competitiveness, future orientation or planning ahead, emphasizing the scientific, dominating nature, and then individualism and independence. And so I use this in the book, and I reference this across because I think this speaks so profoundly to when we start to ask the question, what's the difference between native spirituality and Christian spirituality as we see it today, that this is one of the fundamental, a lot of these are the fundamental aspects that are involved. It's a difference in way of thinking, it's a difference in way of approaching it. And so part of the book, and one thing I really hoped to put in there was how I've come to understand this as a Chickasaw person. And so I'm just going to highlight a few of these. I won't go into details. And I love to have more conversations with anybody that wants to talk more about this. But, looking at some of the parallels spiritually between Christianity and Native American, but also seeing the differences, was one that I brought up was the Onchaba, which is our mound understanding. Chickasaw are mound people, much like Choctaw people. And the mounds served a variety of purpose in Chickasaw culture and history. They were housing sites, they were meeting sites, but above all, they were gathering sites for spiritual and sacred times. So we stomp danced on mounds, they were burial sites, and they held a very specific role, especially when it came to spiritual living. And these were sacred sites for us. The mounds were sacred spaces. They gave hope. They offered peace, encouraged love. And one of the connections that I make is for the mound was a gathering site, especially in a spiritual way. But the mounds often had these big greens in front of them. And so the higher point was where the sacred acts would happen, and then the down below was people would just gather all around the mount. Another one was let me find it. Oh, the Alikchi, right? So we had healers as Chickasaw people. Healers were and are very big in our culture and tradition, and ways of using the gifts of creation to heal people. Another one are the Loksi Chalachi, which are the turtle shell shakers. Our dances, we danced. So in the Chickasaw culture, dances are prayer dances, and they are done around a fire. Chickasaw culture goes counterclockwise around the fire, and there's a reason for that. We do so that our hearts are closest to the fire always. The fire represents the sacred or creator, and so our hearts are always closest to the fire. And so we go around, and these are prayer acts for us. One of our favorite meals is the pashofa dish. So eating pashofa was very holy and very sacred. It was a healing meal that we would have, and it was used for that reason. It was accompanied often by dancing and praying, and so the very meal itself was very holy. And so the book then kind of transitions out of looking at some of the parallels between Native spirituality and Christian spirituality, and what the Native community can, in my opinion, offer the greater Christian community. And a lot of that is going to be breaking away from some of the structures and molds of the Christian church today, and looking at how can we, looking especially into history, how can we look back while looking forward at the same time, and see a new way of encountering God. Not just encountering God, but how do we live as human beings in constant connection with Creator, and not human doings, who put spirituality in a box and go and get that box when we need it. So, to summary, kind of in summary, when I wrote the book, I have to be honest and share a little bit of an honest moment. I've not shared this with anybody, so this is breaking news for a second. Here we go. So when I wrote the book, the original title was going to be Teepees and Tabernacles. And I was going to make the juxtaposition between tabernacles are not the only place to worship God, teepees very much are. And I was going to explain that not all tribes are teepee, but I'm just using that as an image. So, but I came across a poem, and when I read this poem, to me, it spoke so deeply to everything that I was trying to write, that Native people have such a wonderful approach to what it means to live in connection with Creator. And it comes from a Chickasaw poet. Her name is Margie Testerman, and the poem's titled "Footprints Still Whispering in the Wind." So I'll kind of end with this, and then we can go from here. But this poem was a guiding light as I wrote this, as I put the book together. I kept coming back to this poem, especially the last line. So this is "Footprints Still Whispering in the Wind." It says, "The mountains appear as monuments. Great is the Father who fashioned. In the shadow your voice speaks with the approach of dusk. I will forever lift mine eyes. As the stars in the clouds whisper, my heart moves with the leaves. Joy stirs the chords of love. The river sings your praises. Talking rocks echo their refrain. I sing with the voices of the birds. My song will glorify thee. The rain quiets the murmurs as the gentle nodding flowers toll. Though I walk in moccasins, my footsteps follow thee." So I love this poem. To me, it's been such a guiding light. How fitting that I got to be here on Rock Your Mocks Week. So I thought, man, this is just awesome. But I think just in just a brief summary here about the book, I wrote the book with two audiences in mind. For my Native sisters and brothers, I hope it will affirm everything of who we are, who you are, our cultures, our identities, and our ways of living. For my non-Native sisters and brothers, I hope it will open your eyes to a way of connecting with Creator in ways that you never thought possible and that you never dreamed possible. And that we can show such an honor and reverence for all ways, as different as they may be, of connecting with our Creator.
Oh. What do I still miss?
We'll do a little reflection time now, just so we can all sit and let it sink in what Chad has shared with us. All right, so we'll move into our question and response time. I'll open it up with a little something. It really struck me while you were talking, and we've had lots of conversations in our gatherings just about, where Christianity in this country now, having descended from Europe and, in a colonizing way, which came from Rome and, an empire kind of mindset, and how much of that really misses what Jesus taught about, and how much of the native traditions really have a lot of congruence with what Jesus taught.
Yeah.
And like you said, that the church has suffered deeply from not hearing that native perspective that could really bring us back to the heart of what Jesus taught about. But one of the things that really struck me when you were talking about how we shouldn't try to separate our spiritual life from our so-called regular life, that they're really intertwined. And I think you really hear Jesus talk a lot about that, especially in the Sermon on the Mount. And I think it really points to how our church in this day and age is really operating under a lot of the same errors that the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin operated under in when Jesus was walking physically on the earth. And I think, throughout the Sermon on the Mount, you hear Jesus going, this is what you've been taught of what you should do.
Yeah.
But then he says, but this is how you should be.
Yeah.
And that's really like how so when you were talking about the difference between doing and being, it really was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what Jesus was trying to tell us in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
So,
If only we listen, right?
yeah.
It's kind of that part that gets us in trouble. But yeah, I love that. I agree. Absolutely.
All right, Helen, go ahead.
Yeah, Helen's good.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Brian, because I was thinking about the same thing, that kind of a little different, how you can't separate your cognitive life from your spiritual life. And if you try to, you're going to break it because one feeds the other. It's meant to be that one flows into another. I was thinking of an example I heard where some scientists had studied that the Japanese have the green tea that has vitamin K, and they decided they were going to extract the vitamin K from the tea leaf and just make a supplement. And the Japanese laughed at him, thinking, why would you do that? Partly because green tea is such a part of their life that they think, why would you mess up a good thing? It's like saying, let's not eat a good meal. Let's just have IV drip bags and we'll just all sit around, as it goes into us, instead of enjoying it. But it ended up being a disaster because it turned out that the tea is a better way for that to absorb into the body. It's hot, it's closer to the temperature, it's much better. And so the ancient wisdom turned out to be much better, that a lot of people were taking this vitamin K, but it went right through them and they got no benefit out of it. And I think that the same principle can apply to our lives, that we can break it, we can take it out of sync if we try to just separate it out. And I think Western culture even makes a virtue out of compartmentalizing things. I think there's a time and a place when you have to put things on a shelf, like in an emergency when you have to act, but you can't just leave it up on the shelf indefinitely and think everything's going to be okay. So that was what I wanted to share, but I appreciate everything you've shared with us, and I'm glad to be a part of this discussion.
Love that analogy. That's wonderful. I have not heard that one, so that's great. I love remember that.
Gonna use it.
Yes, that's right. I'm going to borrow this.
It was funny how you
So
said it. She's asking which part.
Vitamin K.
Oh, the vitamin K part.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, an IV bag. I'll use this several times, I can already tell, so thank you.
Oh, enjoy.
I thought it was interesting too how you said like when we have an emergency, like sometimes you might need to be compartmentalized, but you shouldn't stay that way. But it made me think of like the stress of our culture. Like everything is an emergency all the time. And that's like where we always live.
Yeah.
And that's why we're all like stressed out all the time, We just need to sit back and have that cup of tea. And
Yes,
relax.
that's right. I know.
Not a
Now
venti.
we're stressed out.
Not a venti. Starbucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the go as they throw it at you as you're driving by in your car,
Yeah.
Okay, well, continuing on with the IV bag thing. Okay, Martin Shaw was talking about how paganism is kind of getting big because, quite frankly, it's too depressing to be an atheist. But so can we separate the, spirit? Like that guy said, he's just not a spiritual person. So, okay, if he's going along in his life up to that point, and he's not like been consciously accessing his spirit, does that mean it's been floating along but like behind him like a helium balloon, or does that mean it's like trapped in the cellar, or does that mean he's been doing the IV bag thing and the meal has been set, or what does it even mean if you haven't been aware of your spirit? I wonder.
And from that conversation, I wondered what he really meant by that. He could tell it didn't add up to me from our first conversation, and he knew where we were going. And I told him, I said, brother, you're going to be back here in a few months. Okay, I'll give you this, this little prescription, and that's what he wanted. He didn't use that language, but I just need a prescription, and then I'll go take it, and we'll see how well it works. And if it doesn't, I'll come back and get a different prescription. And so I guess he thought that he could just reenact or just kickstart his spiritual life, which it's really not how that works. And then that led to our ultimate conversation of it's about being a spiritual person and living in communion with God. So I'm not sure what he thought about that, or what he thought if it was floating or in the basement, like you said. But he was somewhere lost in translation. Yes.
Once someone explained it like we're all like, wasn't there a band called Radiohead? We're all like Radioheads, and we have all these different broadcasts and
like
songs
signals.
and things going through. One of them's a voice from our second grade teacher. One of them's something that our husband asked us to do 5 minutes ago. And another one, maybe it's the Holy Spirit, or and we just have to figure out, wait, okay, who's talking now?
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good, smart one. I need to pay attention to that one more, So I wonder if he just has been thinking it's different thoughts and he hasn't been realizing it's the Holy Spirit. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of ruminating.
Sounds to me like you need a knob that you can tune
Yeah.
the ones in that are going to affect your life,
Yeah.
and then tune out the ones that just like you don't need to hear them. You just don't.
That's probably what scripture reading kind of helps us do. I don't know.
Yeah, let me set it to a frequency or
That's
station.
right. Yeah,
here.
99.9.
Yeah, there you go.
Stay there.
Yeah.
Stay there.
I think it also gets back to how we've talked before about like a lot of times when people want to improve their lives or make a change in their lives, they oftentimes want to try to change who they are, and that never works.
Yeah.
And for your guy thinking like, well, I'm not a spiritual person, that means you have this idea of a spiritual person who's a really completely different personality from who you are. And if you try to be that other personality, it's always going to fail.
Yeah.
What you have to understand is, how does my personality really interact with the spiritual realm, and what does that mean for me? And I think that again, in our culture, we like to kind of put everything in a box and avoid, this is a spiritual person,
Yes.
and so like if that happens to be your personality trait, then you can be a spiritual person.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, then like don't touch that
Yeah.
box. So you're just stuck out of luck. But yeah.
And I love what he said about, well, my wife's a spiritual person. I thought, I don't really think your wife's any more spiritual than you are. I think she's approaching it very differently than you are.
Yeah. All right, so we got Karen and then Petadaka. So go ahead, Karen.
Chad, have you ever heard of the book Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence?
I actually have, yes. I'm not gonna say I've read it though. I know of it. Let me say it that way.
That was the book that gave me the right in my mind to keep Christ there as a constant presence of him. Whereas I came from a Catholic background and then went into the evangelical world, then was in the plain world for 30 years. So I've had a big gamut of experiences. But he is Catholic, but he obviously got to be born again because he couldn't do what he's doing if he didn't have a true relationship with the Lord. But I really felt like that book gave me the right, which I knew in my spirit, my native spirit, to that it should be all one. He gave me the right to have that all one. So I've read it about 30 years ago, so I've really appreciated it. The other thing I wanted to say is, now I'm in a church that has more of the spirituality. They want you to have the spirituality consistently. However, after what you shared tonight, I got a different view of what I was seeing. They do it by still having you do it rather than be it. So that they want you to be spiritual. They want you to be listening to the Holy Spirit all the time, but they're always giving you things to do to get there, which I find really fascinating because I knew it didn't fit right, but until you said it tonight, it didn't connect. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I got one quote I'll share real quick before Pentadaka here. I try to find these and save them on my phone. It says, a Native American culture is a perfect example of one that is totally spiritual without religion.
Yeah. Yeah, love that.
Okay.
All right, go ahead and Petadaka.
You've given me a lot to think about, like many of us who are here tonight. I greatly appreciate what you had to share, but I do have a big question that may just be to you or to anybody really, but why do you think Indigenous people choose to follow the Christian doctrine? I know you were talking a little bit about spirituality and the spirituality behind Christianity and everything, but I'm just wondering, why do you think our Indigenous people have interwoven our past traditions with Christianity? Was this something that you think was given to us, or do you think this was something that we just had to adapt? You know, tell me what your thoughts are.
Sure. Well, I think I have a lot of thoughts already in answering your question. So I'm going to try to organize these as best I can. I think that's somewhat contextual. Let me say it this way. I think for some, yes, this was something that was kind of imposed on. And I have family that is this way. When I ask them, why are you Christian? Well, we've always been Christian. And where does that come from? Well, our family's always been Christian. And that's their answer, right? And they go back to, missionaries or, colonization times. They can go all the way back up, right? Or even, residential schools when, religion was really imposed in those times. So they'll go all the way back and they'll say, well, this is the time when our family became Christian. And so I think for some, that is the answer, right? For some, it's not, we found this, but this was given to us. And for others, this was forced upon us, right? And for those, for my family members in that way, they make the best of it. And they do their best to find the balance between their Christianity and their nativeness. Let me say it that way. But I don't think that's for everybody. I think, I've had conversations with lots of Native Christian pastors, and this conversation has come up also. And I've asked them, where did you or your family, or however you want to look at this, when did you become Christian and why? And for them, that they have found a way for Christianity to be able to block out some of the parts of Christianity that really push against the native culture, their native spirituality. They found a way to be able to connect with the Creator in a deeper way because of Christianity. And so for them, they've kind of do this balancing act, right? Holding on to my native values, but at the same time, I can still find deeper value while not adopting all of Christianity, but Christianity can still lead me into a deeper spiritual life. And so I think to answer, I think it depends on the context, the past of the person and the person's family and how they got there. But those are the two that I hear most often in my ministry and then in conversations with fellow natives. That it was either something that, hey, it was imposed and we make the best of it, or no, it's something that we found and we do the same thing. We make the best of it. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah, mostly. I also have another like kind of follow-up question, as Brian would put it. What do you think of spiritual awakening? Because you talked about a person who had felt like they were like kind of dead in their spirit or lost in their spirit. What do you think about a spiritual awakening? Like, just your thought, I guess.
Yeah. So let me say how I understand that term, and then I'll go into what I think about it. So I in the case of the gentleman that met with me, right? He kind of did have a spiritual awakening in the sense of he learned a new way of living. And he learned that spirituality or spiritual living wasn't something that he just went and got when things felt bad, because that's what he was doing, right? Things were going bad in his life, and he would go get out his box and then, okay, let me see what I can pull out of the box to make me feel better. And that's what ultimately just every time was a dead end for him. So I think in this context, his spiritual awakening was very much him stepping back and saying, I've got to look at how I approach this entirely because I'm approaching it wrong. And so in this sense, it became everything about me has to connect with God. And the moment that can happen, which it did for him, it took a bit, but it did, that was kind of awakening for him. He kind of had a new life after that. And then everything after that wasn't this constant, let me treat the problem, but I have this wonderful life, and no matter what's thrown at me, I'm set up to handle that. And so I think if I understand that in that way, then I think that's a wonderful thing. I think when people can find, which that's the whole point or premise of the book, right? This is kind of why I wrote this, is so those who are struggling like this gentleman can go, wow, there's a new way that I can approach this entirely, that I can certainly have a spiritual awakening in that way. Yeah, I hope that answers that for you too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I do have another one, but I'll wait.
All right, we'll let Helen do round two, and then Petadaka can do her round two. So go ahead, Helen.
Okay. I was thinking again about like I spent time in Japan. I lived 2.5 years there, and so I learned some things about Eastern medicine. The Japanese have taken in a lot of Chinese medicine, and the Chinese idea is that you don't start taking medicine when you're sick. You start it as a regimen when you're healthy, and then you don't get sick. And I think that's kind of what that guy was doing with his spirituality, that you wait till there's something wrong and then you bring it out when it should be a daily practice. And that, I think that's another one of the problems in that cultural perspective, that you almost wait like till you're like at your breaking point, and then you give it a chance instead of integrating it into your life.
Who did the sign language with us?
She was showing us.
This is the medicine, right?
Medicine, yeah.
We were talking about what's good. I'm learning here.
Yeah.
Good is
So good medicine way,
Yeah.
right? Well, to the point is, and to just echo what you're saying here, Karen, right? Is that Karen?
Helen.
Oh, Helen.
Oh, Helen. I'm sorry, Helen. So what Helen was saying is that's what he was doing, right? He was waiting till something went wrong, and then he was trying to put on. I love this symbol for this, like salve, right? He was trying to put on the salve to cure it, or yes. And to your point, Helen, if we just do that daily, much like we, and I do this, and many Chickasaw, saging or smudging off in the morning, right? That's our way, and we do that as a prayer act. That's the first thing we do when we wake up, right? That's kind of the point here is when we make that the center of our life, we don't have to put on medicine when we get sick. It's already there. So I love, and Helen, by the way, I would love to have more conversations with you about your time, where was it, Japan, because my gosh, this is 2 illustrations now, so.
Yeah, great.
Yes, that's great, thank you.
Yeah. It also reminds me of, from what you guys were talking about, that like in our culture, that's kind of our whole approach to everything.
Yeah.
'Cause even if you look at our medicine in American culture, like American healthcare is really good at rescue medicine. Like when you have a huge accident or you become really sick, then we've got all the devices and weird things, whatever, and we can bring you back from the dead and get you back alive again. But if you just want to stay healthy, you just want to be healthy,
Go to Japan.
like our healthcare system is horrible at just helping people not get sick in the first place.
Yeah.
And in fact, because it's built on capitalism, they really want people to get sick because that's how they make money, is by getting people from sick to being healthy again. But if people just don't get sick in the first place, then our healthcare system doesn't make any money, and so it doesn't work that way. So it's that same thing. I think in this country, people tend to approach their spiritual practice the same way. They just want to go along and just do their thing, and then when they're having a nervous breakdown and an eternal dark night of the soul, then they're like, okay, now I'll be spiritual until I can get back to normal. Like, okay, now I feel normal, now I'm going to forget spirituality until I crash and burn again. And so you keep going through this cycle all the time instead of just walking in harmony, which is really like the native approach to well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'll share on that. Walking in harmony. Every morning, without skipping hardly at all, unless there's something pressing in the morning. But usually in the afternoon, the evening is when I get distracted. But first thing in the morning, I dress and I get ready and I hook the dog up on the chain, and then right next to my door as I leave, I have a little basket that I open, and inside there I have tobacco, and that's right next to the doorway. So I grab some tobacco because I leave the house just as the sun is cracking over the mountain. So that's about 7:15 in the morning now. 6:15 early.
Yeah.
So it's bright and early. So when I walk out, that sun's right in my face, and the dog and I walk out, and then she's gotten so used to it that she knows when to stop, and she knows I'm going to pray there before we begin our walk. And so I hold the tobacco to me, and then I hold it up, and I usually hold my hand right in front of the sun when it's shining right into my face, and then I put it on the ground. But then that poem that you read, all I could feel in sense in that poem was everything I do when I walk. When I take off, I feel God's presence on me when that breeze hits me in the morning, the cold chill that I feel, and then as I'm walking, each step that I take, I'm in that meditative mode, like we were talking, contemplative.
Yeah.
That's in the morning. That's when I am focused. I start that way in the morning, and then we go for 2 miles. So I go past a place where there's water trickling, and I go past a place where there's you wouldn't believe this. I'll have to show it to you sometime. But there's this. He must be as big as a barrel. He's about this big. It's a tortoise.
Oh.
We have a tortoise in our community. He's about 2 feet off the ground. His legs are huge, and I thought it was a lawn ornament when I first seen it. I come by, that's a big lawn ornament, and then all of a sudden it went, whoa, like that. Oh wow! I just stood there in amazement, and my dog is like, whoa, like that. So we were taking that in, just that whole image there. And as we keep going and we finish our walk, But all the time, I'm contemplating everything. I'm thinking of Ken, I'm thinking of Don, I'm thinking of you guys' music, upcoming things that you're going to be doing, all of this going through my head and how it's going to all come out. And then in the evening, except for like tonight, I do that walk in the evening, but this here, I'm trying to live in a spiritual way all day long, not just when I have to do it. Yeah. And that's not Sunday morning at 10, okay? I'll turn on my spirituality and sit there for an hour, stand up, sing a couple of songs, and then boom, I've done my spiritual thing for the week. No, it's every day, all day, and I'm just a spiritual being. We Native people are just spiritual beings from sun up to sundown, and overnight too, when the Lord refreshes us too. So,
All right. Canadian Karen.
Canadian Karen.
The other one. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate your sharing tonight. I guess as you were sharing and talking about this spirituality and just some of those pieces, like I spent lots of time in the north with the Inuit and just where they were, in central northern Canada, 3,000 years without contact with Euro people. And I met people who were one generation removed from Euro contact. And just the concept of how much the land impacts and living in creation. And so I think that is something that, depending on which Indigenous group you're talking with, how far they've been removed from the land, whether they have to go back and find their heritage. So those who were removed and pushed into urbanization were, that's a huge piece. I run shelters and have for the last 30 years. And so you have people who are far removed. They have a long journey back to find that space. And other cultures around the world who are close to land so if you look at China, there's a lot of space, not just the big cities, but a lot of the space where they're very land-based still, and other places in the world, in Africa and other places. So I guess I've found that people who are really close to the land and nature and creation itself have this deep, deep understanding that every step we take is really powerful. And so I think that's what so much of the Indigenous spirituality brings, is this. It's still very grounded in the land, in what Creator has gifted us. We were doing a study on Ephesians and reading from the First Nations version and talking about what is rock solid. And it was really very fascinating that things that are still the same, that have never changed, is the water, the trees, the land, the plants. Everything else has come and gone and will come and go. So we were doing this thing of, even cell phones and compared to landlines and what comes and goes. But the things that are still, it was really powerful for everybody to say the trees we look at are still the same trees that have always been. The water is still the same water, the sky, and really going back to that. And I think that's where that spirituality is so deeply entrenched in most Indigenous peoples I've walked with, is that it's still based in what Creator has gifted us, not what we think we are gods and make ourselves. And so anyways, I just wanted to share that from some of that, because as I heard you again and pushing this guy out of his little doing it, because we can't do creation, we just can be in it. It's just so big and vast that we just can bask in it. And when we do that each day, okay, you see, when you go for your walk, as I was listening to you, I was like, you made my point perfectly. Just walking out, the sun, shining there. It's still the same sun that was there at create, for each one of us. Anyways, just my thoughts. Thank you so much. It was really powerful.
Thank you. That's great.
All right, Petadaka put her second part, so I'll just read it from the chat in Petadaka, and then if you want to add anything to it, you can. But she wrote, do you think that we as human beings, in the most general sense, are innately born with the spiritual aspect already ingrained, or is it something we have to grow and develop? And then somebody else commented on that and said that they think we're born with it, but then through our culture we unlearn it. So there's kind of two aspects there. Does that sound right, Empedadaka?
Unless you become as children.
All right.
So, Mpedadaka, what comes to mind, and I use this in the book, and I reference this, and I'm thinking, was Miss Mann's writing. She writes about the spiritual practices of her tribe, and she goes into the naming ceremony and how important that is, and that itself is a very sacred and spiritual act. So to me, that is kind of my answer to this is, naming ceremonies in Native people is recognizing that innate spiritualness that we have, that we are born as spiritual people. But I do agree with the comment and the follow-up comment that unfortunately, that understanding is easily unlearned. And that's kind of the tension here, right? That's the tension in the conversation is that although we are born very spiritual people, we're born in, and Miss Mann writes greatly about the meaning of the name given and why that name is chosen and the sacred practice behind that. Unfortunately, Western society makes it very easy to lose sight of that. And I think that's where that tension comes in. And I know I've had lots of conversation with, little nieces and nephews of mine and their struggle with this and how they are struggling with losing sight of cultural ways, especially spiritual ways, in the midst of the dominant Western society that we live in. And I think, that's kind of the end of the book is, so how do we, the book kind of ends on a note of, so where do we go from here? And that's my hope, is that we can relearn those sacred ways that not only have been passed down generation to generation, but that going back to the first peoples that have been there since that time for our ancestors. So I hope that helps. Again, I know I'm playing on both kind of answers there, but
on naming ceremony, I've had the opportunity to give several names to people, and I don't do it like, okay, you want a name, I'll think of one, and then okay, come over tomorrow night and we'll do that.
Right.
No, but it'd take a year or so before I would do a ceremony. I would get tobacco at first and then do it, but I always look to somebody, and then what I found, if I take that time and their time in prayer, is that after they get the name, they seem to follow more in their traditions than I've seen people who get a flippant name or just and randomly, when it's done in the connection with it being real spiritual. Last thing I'll say here is that there is something that someone about to say, are we born that way? I heard this story, true or not, but it's really affected me, is that there was a toddler that was beginning to talk. And you hear some toddlers, they're very articulate, they can really share. And then this, the mother was having another baby, and the baby is born, and pretty soon the baby's starting to take some, learn some words and all that. And the one that's a little older went to that baby and said, "Can you remind me about God? I'm starting to forget as I get older."
Wow.
And he was talking to the baby.
Yeah.
The baby is closer to being really connected with God because it just came from there.
Yeah.
And then, it just always gets me right here.
Wow.
Like, can you remind me of God because I'm starting to forget.
wow. I love that.
I need cleanings.
Yeah. Yes.
I add something to that, brother. It made me think also too of, because of that inherent spirit of creator, as I perceive and believe that we're born with, or that's inside of us. You know, it also, the word says that the Spirit of God, no one can come unto Christ Jesus, Yeshua, Creator sets free, unless he is wooed. And to me, that wooing is kind of like that. When the baby saying, you know, I'm losing my sense, my closeness, my memory, that innate memory that was before, because we know time continues and we're just right here, wherever this is, in the circle of time. The Creator's not in time. And so, you know, I can just see that, you know, help me remember. And so that scripture, the way I would connect that is how, you know, Christ, almost like a mother or a father saying, you know, that wooing of the Holy Spirit, come, you remember, wake up, don't forget. Here's Papa, here's Mama, here's brother, here's sister, here is Father, God, you know, here it is. Remember, we're here. It's inside of you. And if we're blessed and you know, whatever the circumstances, I don't want to frivolize it, but those two things, I know when I had my first religious experience, big religious experience, I was 8 years old. And after that, I can see now that I'm older that I feel like that was a sense of Creator saying, okay, now you're not going to be seeing me and hearing me as often if you're going out in the world, but remember, and I was with you and I've been with you. And now I can look back at 65 and go, you never left me. So that's what witnesses to me.
Did you have something,
Is
Lima?
Karen Heft gone yet? Karen, are you still there? Karen Heft? No, is she gone?
No, I'm
okay,
still
actually, she's still there?
Yes.
Oh, good. Actually, I'm a teacher. And so I guess teacher things get me all excited. And I had this, when you were speaking, it's so hard for students to tie themselves from me to history. You know, from me to 200 years ago, 400 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And when you were speaking, I suddenly saw, you know, taking teenagers to a tree and saying, this tree was planted when your dad was in high school, you know, and then going to another tree and then saying, this tree was planted when your grandfather was in high school. And then to go to this tree that is actually in Hyde Park, where I grew up, and say, this tree was planted 200 years ago. This is what was happening 200 years ago when this plant was planted. That is so exciting to me. So I want to thank you, Karen. That trying to tie me to the land. You know, the land can bring me back to who I am and who I was and who they were. And it's just really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ken?
Well, I'll just come over here. Jesus, when he first spoke, you know, when he first read out of the scroll and he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, called his own people back to the Jubilee, which in my mind is him calling the Jewish people back to their own indigeneity, their place of land and equality and sharing. And I was wondering if that's a kind of concept that would connect with this sense of spirituality that between who Jesus was as an indigenous person, I guess, that place.
Yeah, I love this, and I think there are so many parallels, and I get into this a little bit in the book of between Hebrew culture and Native American culture, and you know, there are lots of parallels that we can draw and we can build upon, and I love this idea of Jesus calling back peoples to their nativeness, right, or their culture or to their ways, and so I think this parallel speaks powerfully. I think I don't want to be the only one to answer, but I love this. So let me say it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
The story of the two little boys and the little boy asking the other boy to remind him of God reminds me of how a lot of times people discredit storytelling as being like oral history or oral traditions and how those are lesser. And that's really ironic because like there was always written traditions, like you find it in like the weavings and in the belts and in the way we wore our regalia for dress. And there were like always stories in the items as well that were captured. And I think a lot of times when you hear someone tell a story, it like activates the mirror neurons in your brain. And then you remember, you know? And I think it's interesting how like storytelling gets discredited when it's really actually based in science too.
Yeah.
It is interesting about like oral histories, because I've done a lot of work with that. I think it gets discredited because people look at storytelling and oral histories from our perspective now, when we have so much that's written down, and that we don't value our words the same way that ancient peoples did. And we say things flippantly and without thinking about them. But when you go back and you look at oral traditions, like those are very regimented, and like I can speak mostly from the Southern Siberian people because that's who I'm most familiar with. But for the people who were the musicians who told the oral histories, like they went through a rigorous learning process to learn those songs and to make sure they understood like every aspect of it and what every word and what every line meant and what was the significance of it. And it was a much richer and deeper and more accurate way of transmitting history than written histories are now. But because we, from our perspective now of having books and all these things, and that we don't put the same weight in how we speak and how we communicate stories now as the traditions that have oral traditions still, you know, those are really important, the way those are passed on. And it's been shown when people have studied it that often the oral histories are actually more accurate than cultures that just rely on written histories.
I also think it's interesting how like capitalism is so obsessed with quantification that it completely like discredits relationship. So often like the disconnect isn't necessarily with like the gospel a lot. A lot of the times the disconnect is with quantifying the relationship. And the reason why we have to quantify the relationship is because we operate within these contexts of capitalism. And so I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to reconcile, but it's also like interesting how in capitalism our fragmentation is expected, because if we're not fragmented, we can't be sold. And if we can't be sold, then what's the point of capitalism, you know?
Yeah, ouch.
Ultimately, the spirit of Mammon, who seems to have been manifesting everything from the beginning.
I won't get on my anti-establishment soapbox. I totally agree with you.
That's right. Get right on.
Yeah.
Well, I've asked Heaven if she would be our speaker in the future too.
Yeah.
So
That'd be
we'll
fun.
probably get a earful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think we better kind of wind it down. We're starting to lose a few of our people, so I don't want to have too many people drop off. So thank you everyone for your words, listening, and especially for Chad. Petadaka can take us into announcing the next thing up.
Thank you so much, Thank you for joining our family here and teaching us a little something we never really thought about or haven't really dug deep into. We look forward to reading your book, hopefully. Maybe we can maybe consider reading it for one of our Bible study times or something. Hey. But yes, big round of applause. Thank you, Chad. Thank you. Aho, 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 brother. Okay, so now we're gonna go into our closing song, and then Pastor Casey will do. Hey, Pastor Casey will do our send-off blessing. Y'all just saw me praying, okay?
I sat up straight.
Pastor Casey.
I did too. That was funny. I love that.
Live, going live.
All right. It's because you weren't initially written down to do the prayers. So just would make sure that you really knew.
Raise your
All right,
hand.
Life with toddlers.
Yeah.
How's the grand toddlers doing? I'm
Ask
sure
the
they'll be-
toddlers.
Except actually,
Can you
you know,
still
being the
remember
grandparent
God?
with the toddler, like I can let the parents do all the scolding. Let's be like,
All right.
hey, I have
All right,
to
guys,
go away
get your
there."
rattles.
All right, let's move on to the
All right. Thank you, Grover. And also thank you, Donna. We were able to hear you singing along.
All right.
It was beautiful. Okay, Uncle Casey, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you for the send-off blessing.
All right. Well, just a heads up, next week, a friend of mine from Michigan, a guy named Jerry Devine, has worked with many Native churches in that area and has lots to share. Looking forward to it. So also pray for us as we got a lot of work this week because we got to transition from this location, and this will be the last time many of us will walk out of this building, and we'll start our next service next Monday at the Mesa View. A whole different look. We still got to do a lot of setting up and a lot of changes, and pray that all the connections and all the wiring and Wi-Fi all fall into place. Pray for us as we move. So as with that, Father, good medicine is this place where we can be spiritual in a different way than the way that was taught us by the white Western way. And for many people, it does a good thing for us. It helps us to connect spiritually in a way different than we have done many times in the past. I pray that each one of us will find those ways. And like the little toddler, let's ask about how we can remember who God is and what He is and how powerful He is. Help us to remember who God is each day as we wake up and as we greet the sun. With that, everyone have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Monday. In Christ's name, amen.
Oh, so.
Yay.
All right. We'll see y'all next week then. Just kidding.